The Ventura Local Agency Formation Commission meeting Wednesday, April 17th, 2019. I'd like to move to item 2, Pledge of Allegiance, and would Commissioner Rooney please lead us in the pledge?
Please place your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for that, Commissioner Rooney. Moving on to item 3, roll call. What we're going to try and do is mark ourselves present on the computer if we can. We might not be able to, but let's try it real quick.
Commissioner Freeman.
Oh, we can't do it on the. We were going to try and do it on the computer, but I don't know if we can.
But that's later if there is a roll call.
Oh, for the, I see. Gotcha. All right. Miscommunication. Nothing. We're roll calling right now. Go for it, Rochelle.
Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Parks. Here. Commissioner Parvin.
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez.
here.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Oh, I thought did you call me twice?
Commissioner Ramirez.
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Zaragoza.
Yep.
Chair Ross.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Curtis.
Here.
And I'm here. I think she called.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're off to a fantastic start here today. All right, so everybody's present for the most part. We've got a quorum. Let's move on to item 4, agenda review. Consider and approve by majority vote minor revisions and commission items on the agenda. Is there anything that we'd like to move around here today? No. Okay, let's move forward then. Item 5, public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on any subject matter within the commission's jurisdiction. Any speaker cards from the public? Okay. So we'll move forward to item 6. I'm sorry, the consent calendar. Would anyone in the commission like to pull any items off of the consent calendar?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Thank you, Commissioner Parvin and Commissioner Zaragoza. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Roll call, is that what, or you want to do that on the computer? You got it, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, public hearing items. Item 9, this is review and readopt the LAFCo fee schedule for the 2019 and 20 fiscal year. Determine that no changes to the current LAFCo fee schedule are necessary and adopt a resolution to readopt the existing LAFCo fee schedule for the 2019 and 20 fiscal year. I'd like to open the public hearing on this item, and if we have any report from LAFCO staff.
No, we just recommend approval.
Okay. And approval, I have not closed it yet, but do we have any speaker cards on this item? No speaker cards. All right, I will close the public hearing, and we have move approval and second from Commissioner Parvin. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so item 10 is also a public hearing item. LAFCO proposed budget for fiscal year 2019 and 20. Adopt a resolution approving the proposed budget for 2019 and 20 and directing staff to transmit the proposed budget to the county, each city, and each independent special district. I'd like to open the public hearing for item 10. And Kai, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Ross. It'll be just a moment when the presentation will load. And I am fighting a cold, so as you can probably tell. So I apologize in advance. Okay, as Commissioner Ross, or Chair Ross said, this is item 10. It's recommended proposed budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. As you know, Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, or LAFCo law, does provide that each LAFCo must adopt a proposed budget by May 1st each year and a final budget by June 15th of each year. We're here, of course, considering the recommended proposed budget for next fiscal year. I want to start off with the current fiscal year in review, and we'll start with expenditures. The LAFCO budget divides expenditures into three categories. They are total salaries and benefits, total services and supplies, and contingencies. For the current fiscal year, all three of these categories added up to $766,096. That was the anticipated expenditures for the current fiscal year. We are projecting to expend $683,050 for this current fiscal year here. And that's largely due to the fact that we do not anticipate expending any of the contingencies, which is almost $70,000. So that results in an estimated savings of $83,046 for this fiscal year. Now, regarding revenue, the LAFCO budget divides revenue up into three categories. One is fund balance, which is not reflected here on this table. The other is interest earnings and other revenue from fees, and then other governmental agencies. For the current fiscal year, the adopted budget did anticipate $651,096 in total revenue, again, excluding the use of fund balance. We're projected to expend $645,596, and this results in a deficit of $5,000 due to less than anticipated revenue from application fees, which would be the second row here. Excuse me. So when you add the projected expenditure savings of $83,046 with the $5,000 anticipated deficit, we end up with a projected fund balance at the end of this fiscal year of a little over $78,000. Now, LAFCO law does provide that any fund balance left over from one fiscal year can be used for the subsequent fiscal year, and that's what we will be recommending here, and I'll talk about that shortly. So now on to the recommended proposed budget for next fiscal year. We'll start with expenditures. As I mentioned, expenditures are divided into these three subcategories: salary and employee benefits, services and supplies, and contingencies, and I'll talk about each of those here briefly. For salaries and benefits, we are recommending an increase from the current fiscal year of $548,700 to a recommended proposed budget of $586,450. This is an increase of $37,750 or 6.9%. I'll talk a little bit about the driving factors or the primary driving factors of that increase. The first is in regular salaries. We're recommending an increase of 5.8% here on this first row here, from $368,500 to $390,000, which is $21,500. That increase is due to just a general increase in regular salaries and associated benefit accounts due to prospective merit increases for staff as provided for by the county's management resolution under which LAFCO staff operates. Regarding retirement contributions, which is in the second row here on the table, this is set by the county. The current fiscal year budget allocated $80,500. It is going up to $93,500, which is an increase of $13,000 or 16.1%. And here in this second bullet, the increase in this retirement contribution is due to an approximate 2% increase in the overall percentage of the salaries and benefit accounts used to determine the contribution. So currently that amount is 18% of those salary and benefits goes to these contributions. It's going up to 20%. And again, that's established by the county and they're reflected in the LAFCO budget. The third primary reason why the salary and benefits is increasing, is due to an increase in group insurance from $31,000 this year to $35,000 next year, an increase of $4,000 or 12.9%. This reflects an increase in the contribution toward health insurance, again, as provided for under the county management resolution. So those are the three primary generators of that increase in salary. The second category for expenditures is for services and supplies. The current adopted budget, $147,750. We are proposing an increase to $168,300, or an increase of $20,550, which represents almost a 14% increase. And here's a little bit of a discussion about why. The first row in the table here is regarding other maintenance. The current adopted budget allocated $500 for this. This account code covers just any repairs that might be needed to the LAFCo office, so we typically allocate a minimal amount just to cover those expenses in case. We're recommending an increase of $9,500 or $10,000 for a total of $10,000 due to a change in county policy. Up until this year, the county was not charging LAFCo for the use of this room. So all of the tech support, the recording of the meetings, the preparing of those recordings, and the posting on the website was never charged to LAFCO. There was a change in county policy last year, and starting this year, those costs are now going to be passed down on whoever's using this room, including the commission. Based on this year's charges, we anticipate a typical commission meeting of 2.5 hours is going to cost about $1,000. And with 10 regularly scheduled meetings a year, we estimate the total cost to be $10,000. So that is a new cost in this budget, and it will be ongoing for future budgets. The second row here, building leases and rentals, non-county owned. This is account code 2241. This is a new account code to the LAFCO budget, and this reflects the fact that the Commission's offices will be relocating off-site, and the Commission approved the entering into a sublease with the county, and this account code covers the cost of that sublease. And for the first year, it's $28,000. Now, these increases are offset somewhat by a reduction in account code 2114. That's the last row in that table. These are facilities and materials. The current fiscal year, it was $16,400. This is essentially the rent that the Commission pays for the current LAFCO offices because the office will be relocating off-site. That account code will go away starting next fiscal year, and will go down to zero. Another cost savings that I haven't included in here is there's another a fee that the county charges the Commission to inhabit office space in this building, and that's regarding grounds and building maintenance. That was anticipated to be $7,000 for next fiscal year, and then another fee after that because it's charged 2 years after the fact. The county CEO has agreed to waive that cost to LAFCO. That's not reflected in the table, but that's an additional cost savings of $7,000 to offset the overall increase. And then the third expenditure is contingencies pursuant to Commission policy. 10% of total expenditures are to be set aside for contingencies, and current budget is $69,646. The recommended budget, proposed budget is $75,475, and that just represents 10% of total expenditures. So these are all of the anticipated expenditures under the proposed budget. It represents an increase from $766,000 for the current fiscal year to $830,225. This is an increase of $64,129 or 8.4% total. Now, we are going to recommend that the Commission appropriate $150,000 in unassigned fund balance, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a minute. And that's to help keep the cost to our funding agencies to a lower cost. Okay, financing sources. As I mentioned, they're separated into three categories: fund balance, miscellaneous revenue, which is interest earnings and fees, and then revenue from other agencies. Regarding fund balance, as I mentioned earlier, we are anticipating a fund balance at the end of this fiscal year of $78,046. We are recommending that that entire amount be used for the next year's budget, but also an additional about $72,000 in fund balance for a total of $150,000. So if you look at the last column here in this table, here's the $150,000 that we're going to be using. So at the end of next fiscal year, we anticipate to expend all $150,000. That will still allow the commission to retain $100,000 in its litigation fund that would be committed pursuant to commission policy. As far as unassigned fund balance, the commission would retain $138,371, which is 60 days working capital in its unassigned fund balance, and that's pursuant to commission policies. And then there would be an additional $208,859 in unassigned fund balance. And staff's plan is to, again, offset any increases next year by using more of that unassigned fund balance. So the increases to our funding agencies are not as dramatic as they would be if we expended it all this year. So at the end... Mm-hmm.
Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say fund balance, are we talking reserve here?
Essentially, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous revenue, the current budget anticipated $28,500. We are projecting $23,500 just due to less than anticipated application fees. So we are going to be conservative in the proposed budget and estimate revenue at about $23,000. That's what's recommended. And this leads to our final financing source, which is other governmental agencies, which of course provides the majority of LAFCo revenue. The current budget, the total for other governmental sources was $622,000. Divided by 3, again, the county of Ventura is responsible for a third of this, the 10 cities are responsible for a third, and the 30 independent districts are responsible for a third. So it was $207,532 for each of those funding sources. We're recommending an increase of $11,543 to each of these, up to $219,075, which is a 5.5% increase. This is a table just of the totals of the revenue. I guess most of the proposed revenues are here. They reflect the $150,000 in appropriation, of fund balance, $23,000 in miscellaneous revenue, $657,225 from other agencies, for a total of $830,225. And with that, staff recommends that the commission adopt the resolution approving the proposed budget for 2019-2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Since this is a public hearing, Rochelle, do we have any public speaker cards on the item? I don't have any up here. Kai, did we get any feedback from the cities or special districts on the budget?
I got a phone call from the city manager of Moore Park, just asking about, LAFCo's budget is very complicated, so he wasn't sure if the overall city's increase was 8.4%, but once I explained that the allocations from the 10 cities is divided by revenue, and it was actually a very nominal increase, he was satisfied with the budget and did not have any further concerns. Other than that, I haven't talked to anybody about it. No one has expressed any concerns.
Nobody. Okay. Do I have any questions from? I'm sorry, Commissioner Rooney.
Should we use this or not?
The display.
Yes.
Sure. If you're not going to speak, if you want to turn your microphone off.
No. I mean, so like I pushed the speaker request button. Should we not?
Oh, yes. Very good. Look how high tech we are. It's working. Yes, it's working. Great.
Okay, good. I have 3 comments regarding the budget. First of all, I'm going to go back to my comment from last year regarding the distribution of the costs for LAFCo amongst the three agencies that are represented here. I still feel that there's an inadequacy in the way that it's distributed. I know that there's laws that surround this of how it can be allocated. I know that there are solutions that we can make to change that if it's the will of this commission. But just to make my point here, the city of Oxnard has and I'm picking on you, Carmen. The city of Oxnard has a $361 million budget and pays $75,000 in fees. Callegas, on the meanwhile, has about a third of that budget and pays $87,000. So with a third of the budget, they're paying, much more than the city of Oxnard. Same goes for the Conejo Parks and Rec, who has a smaller budget than the city of Hueneme, and yet they pay almost more than double the amount in fees. So I feel like the special districts are carrying the burden here for the commission fees. Secondly, regarding the increases in the salaries, we had a 5.8% increase there, yet COLA is like 2.8. So I'm wondering where the increase of that 3%, how we're moving more than COLA, on the salary increases. And the third thing is, I'm not clear on the history of the county management resolution. And again, I go back to LAFCo is an independent agency, not part of the county. And so we seem to tie ourselves directly to the County of Ventura's schedule on salaries and all sorts of things. And so I'm unclear as to why we do that. And if we're independent, then we should be independent on that. So.
Okay, Kai, you care to comment on any of those questions there?
Sure. Regarding the distribution of the allocations to all the different agencies, counties, cities, and special districts, that's established pursuant to state law. And that third for the cities and that third that goes to the districts, it is distributed based on revenue from the latest state report, which is usually 2 years prior. That's just the way the law is set up. So regardless of what the district's overall budget was, it's the amount of revenue that it received compared to all of the other special districts, and that determines its percentage of that 1/3%. There's nothing that the commission can do about that at this point. I know that I believe, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, that the independent special district committee could propose some revisions to how the special districts fund LAFCo. But again, you have to take into consideration that any reduction, say to Callegas, means that the other 29 districts will be paying more. So whether that happens or not, that would be up to the special district special selection committee. Do you have anything to add to that, Michael?
Just briefly, what Mr. Loomis says is correct. The commission has no authority to change the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 share. The commission certainly has the authority to decide what the dollar amount is that has to be shared, 33% each. And then with respect to the cities and the special districts, they each have, there's a city selection committee, there's a special district selection committee. Under LAFCo law, those committees are given the authority, and there are some specific rules tied to that, to adjust how among the cities the 1/3 is divided. Likewise, among the special districts, as Mr. Loma said, the special district committee can decide how to divide up that 1/3. But this commission, the only authority of this commission is to decide what's the dollar amount that has to be shared, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but can't then go down beyond that and make any decision.
But there are some counties around the state that have adjusted that distribution. So I'm saying that there are solutions.
I'm not aware of any, and it would be if they adjusted the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 with respect to counties in which there are more than one city, or there are special districts that are on LAFCo, because there are some counties in which special districts are not on LAFCo. But I'm not aware of any county in which there are county, city, and special district representatives that have adjusted that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and if they did, it would violate state statute.
It's interesting that, too, we don't have Cayugas here or City of Oxnard screaming about paying too much. Oh, it's coming. Oops. Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, where are we at with the special districts reviews? At what, are we doing it now, or is it anticipated down the road, or where are we in that cycle?
The municipal service reviews?
Pardon me?
The municipal service reviews?
Yeah, the service reviews.
Well, we are in the process of preparing a municipal service review for all of the sewer provider districts and water districts in the county. We're not doing all of the districts. The commission has adopted a schedule that we do some districts every year for the 5 years, and then we begin the review again. So it's on a 5-year timetable. The commission modified that to allow staff to work on the MSR of all of the sewer districts and all of the water districts in one document. So we are always in the process of reviewing special districts. It just depends on the 5-year increment where we are.
I guess my question is, are we funding that are we doing that work in-house, or is it out?
We do that in-house. Yes. Regarding Commissioner Rooney's other questions, excuse me, the increases to regular salaries are due to cost of living increases. We don't anticipate any this year. None have been scheduled, but it's primarily due to staff raises. The expectation with a satisfactory review is a 5% increase. So the deputy executive officer and the clerk have been receiving those increases every year. So that's why the salary increase is reflected in the budget. Regarding your last question, as far as why the commission's staff is tied to the county management resolution, is because under the memorandum of agreement with the county and LAFCo, the county agrees to provide LAFCo with staff. So your staff is actually county staff under contract with the commission. So we are subject to all of the county policies regarding staffing, salaries, and because we are considered management, we are covered by the county's management resolution.
Okay, Commissioner Zaragoza.
You answered the question regarding the salaries. It's more of the evaluation of that employee that that we do every year. So that's basically what it is. And also other items besides COLA is the MOUs that are also worked through the cities, to the county and the unions.
Yes, and LAFCO staff is within a salary range. It's not indefinite 5% raises. It's limited to a range. So,
Commissioner Freeman.
Just to clarify, so what you're saying is to instigate any kind of change to the allocation, the special district committee could meet and come back with a proposal. Is that right?
It actually wouldn't be a proposal. It could, if it followed the rules under LAFCO law, it could determine this is how the special districts have decided to share. And it wouldn't be for this commission to say yay or nay. That would just be how they would be shared, yes.
Yeah, like Commissioner Rooney said, there are other counties that handle it differently. And so...
Well, I guess we want to be specific when you say counties. There are other groups of special districts in other counties that handle it differently, correct? And I don't know for sure, but I suspect that in some counties there are groups of cities that have chosen to divide it up differently than just on the revenue as the statute provides for a default.
So if they had decided to do that, that means they have the latitude to do that.
Correct. So it's, again, not adjusting the fact that the cities are responsible for 1/3. It's adjusting just how those cities choose to divide up the 1/3 among themselves.
You mean special districts?
And it also applies, the same thing would apply to special districts. The special districts can choose how they want to divide up the 1/3. They don't have any say over reducing the 1/3 to say 25%. Yeah.
And several years ago, there was a board member from Cayugas who sat on LAFCO, and she asked staff to look into the process of doing just that. I wasn't the executive officer, but the previous executive officer looked at it. And it was somewhat of a daunting process, primarily because it would require all of the other special districts to pay more. So it was kind of dropped at the request of the Cayugas Commissioner.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Yes, just hypothetically, if our staff was not subject to the county resolution, I actually asked Mr. Walker what would be required for us to set salaries, policies for personnel, et cetera.
There are a couple different ways to look at it. If LAFCo decided to go out on its own, it would become an employer. Right now, you don't have any employees. You contract with the county has employees. If you didn't do that, LAFCo would now have employees. And you'd have, you know, all the rules that go with an organization that has employees, and making sure you have in place all of the systems and everything else in order to deal with your employees. And likewise, if you know, the MOA with the county provides for the auditor controller to do all of the accounting work, all of the payroll. If you didn't have that, you then have to either employ somebody to do that work, or hire somebody else to do all of that work. So it would be a very significant change, you know, depending on the scope of what your commission would choose to do in terms of severing the relationship with the county. And certainly it would require a lot of work for us to look into and fully advise you of the risks and benefits and costs of doing that. But it wouldn't be just as simple as saying we aren't going to use the county anymore. We're going to employ Kai and Andrea directly. There would be a lot of other things that would have to be done in connection with that.
We'd also have to contract with you, Mr. Walker, and that would be
that is correct. Yes.
No, I just couldn't see. I just couldn't. Well, sure, but I just think it'd be so complicated. I certainly don't think it's a good idea.
Also, you know, I think by being with the county, we spread out the costs throughout. You know, because just to specifically have our own finance committee, our own retirement, and et cetera, would be just monumental. Right? Medical and all my goodness. Exactly. And I think we belong to Becerra too, right?
Correct, yes.
So see, that's another entity in itself. So it's tremendous.
Yes. Any other?
I would just say if the special districts want to talk amongst themselves and come up with a different plan, you know, I think for LAFCo, the point is that they get their third chunk. And if you have a special district association, and if they decide that they don't like each putting in the same percentage of their budget, then we're welcome to have it in that discussion.
Mm-hmm. And if requested by a member of the Special District Selection Committee, I can start that process of setting up a meeting. We have not had a successful meeting of the Selection Committee for the entire time I've been with LAFCo. That's why we do everything by mail with the committee.
Commissioner Ramirez, you had something?
Just that theoretically, and again for Mr. Walker, if the cities got together and decided to change their individual allocation or change the method of sharing, that's a possibility.
That is a possibility. Again, the LAFCO statute has some details in there where there may be more voting power given to the largest city in a county. I'd have to revisit that and refresh my recollection. But assuming all of those boxes were checked, yes, the cities together could decide to do a different allocation than the default allocation based on revenue.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
I just want to clarify, because I think we're going down a wrong path of my statement. My statement is not about the independent special districts shifting things around. It's about all three entities revisiting, you know, the split. So it's not about the independent special districts. And some of the comments that I've heard from other special districts is that I know that the revenue number comes from the state, from one place that it does. But a comment made by Cayugas in particular was that there's pass-through that's counted as part of their revenue, and it really isn't part of their revenue. And so it gives an inflated number for the revenue. So again, my comment was not about shifting numbers inside the special districts or the city categories, but yet looking at all three.
Okay, any other comments, questions for staff?
We need a motion for the budget.
I will close the public hearing at this time. And do I have a motion to?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. We approve that. I also want to thank staff for an excellent presentation and also for the good budgeting you've done and your staff. I think we got a very good budget. So I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion from Commissioner Zaragoza and a second from Commissioner Freeman. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye. Do we not need a roll call?
Should we have a roll call vote on that one? Let's do that. Why not? Okay. You have the vote in front of you. Okay, very good. Thank you, Kai. Yes.
Turn on my mic here. Mr. Luoma and I recognized after the last meeting that under the commission's rules, when a sitting commissioner chooses to abstain, an alternate commissioner for that person can step in and vote. So in this case, Commissioner Rooney's choosing to abstain, so Mr. Curtis can step in and vote in her place under the commission's rules. I believe, sure. I believe that you are, yes. If you can change, since you have abstained, you can, if you want to vote either yes or no, you may do that.
Okay. How do we do that?
The initial.
Rescind the initial vote.
Reconsideration. You want to do a vote to reconsider?
Do I need a motion for that?
That we reconsider.
Motion to approve and a second to reconsider.
Second.
Seconded from Commissioner Freeman. Okay, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
Move the approval of the item.
Move approval of the item.
This is
No, we're going to re-vote now.
Now, is there a second to reconsider? Yes. I mean, to approve the item?
Yes. Seconded from
There's a second. No.
Commissioner Parvin, Commissioner Parks, right? All right, we're learning so much here today.
All in favor, please vote.
Okay, and then all in favor of the reconsideration, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed?
Or abstentions?
Or abstentions? Hearing none, motion.
Now we need the motion on the budget.
That was the actual motion.
I'm sorry, yeah, that was the actual, yeah, you're right, I misspoke. Okay. So we have.
That's reconsideration vote?
No.
No.
Nice. So you want to change it to a no?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I want to change it to a no.
Got it.
I thought we were voting on the.
Yeah, I misspoke when I said reconsideration. Can you change that from your end, Rochelle, or do we need to do that whole thing over again?
No.
Okay. All right.
I think, Chair, we can just let the record reflect that the vote on that was 6-1 with Commissioner Rooney voting no.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you, staff, for that budget, and let's hope we have some more excess next year that we can keep padding future budgets and keeping that hit low for the different groups that have to pay for our services. All right, moving on to action items. Item 11, audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018. Receive and file the auditor's annual financial report for the fiscal year ended in June 30th, 2018.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Yes, and we have Ethel from Bavernick, Trine and Day, which is the Commission's audit firm, to present the financial report for fiscal year 17-18.
Great. Yes, that's a recommended action.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
My name is Ethel Corral with Vavernick Trinan Day. We performed the audit of the Ventura LAFCo financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2018. We issued an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the highest level of assurance on the Commission's financial statements. Further, I'm happy to report that there were no disagreements or difficulties encountered with management and staff during our audit process. And we appreciate the opportunity to serve as the Commission's external auditors. And we'd like to thank Commission and management and staff for their cooperation with the audit.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any questions?
Move approval.
Okay. Oh, yes. Commissioner Ramirez.
Mandatory question I always ask everywhere is, very thankful and appreciative of your work and the work of our staff getting an unmodified opinion. It's wonderful. But did you have any recommendations about how it could be done better? We have a very small staff and rely upon the county for a lot of supportive services. But did you have any recommendation at all?
For the fiscal year 18, we did not have any findings or any recommendations at the time. Again, we issued a clean, unmodified opinion. And if there were to be any recommendations, we would definitely communicate that to the board through our communication with governance letter. But for fiscal year 18, there were none.
Thank you very much.
But it was a very clean report.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Zaragoza. We have a second. Second from Commissioner Ramirez. All in favor of receiving and file, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next year. Okay, item 12, amendment to Ventura LAFCo Commissioner's Handbook to establish a process for adoption of new or amended policies to be included in the handbook. Consider a proposed new policy establishing a process for the adoption of new or amended policies. Take it away.
Good morning. At the Commission's last meeting on March 20th, the Commission requested that, directed staff to return to the Commission with a draft policy requiring that a second reading occur for all proposed policy amendments to the LAFCo Commissioner's Handbook, unless the Commission waives the requirement for consideration at a second meeting. Based on that direction, staff created this draft policy for your consideration, which reads, adoption of new or amended Commission policies. The adoption of a new or amended Commission policy shall be considered at 2 Commission meetings as set forth below. A, first meeting. At the first meeting, the Commission shall consider the proposed new or amended policy and shall take one of the following actions. 1, direct that the proposed new or amended policy, with or without modification, be agendized for a second meeting. 2, approve with or without modification or disapprove the proposed new or amended policy and waive a second meeting. Or 3, otherwise direct staff as the Commission deems appropriate. When the Commission otherwise directs staff as the Commission deems appropriate, any future meeting at which the proposed new or amended policy is considered shall be treated as the first meeting for purposes of this section. And B, the second meeting. At the second meeting, the Commission shall consider and either approve with or without modification or disapprove the proposed new or amended policy. Staff recommends that your Commission consider a proposed new policy establishing a process for the adoption of new or amended policies to be included in the Commissioner's Handbook. And the Commission has several options there, including adopting the policy as it reads or as modified, or can also direct staff to return for a second reading. And those are 2 of the options. You're also welcome to deny it or make any modifications throughout that process. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. We do have one speaker card. I think we'll have that. And then if there's any questions for Andrea, we can have her speak from her seat. Thank you. Lynn Jensen Item 12, Ventura CoLab.
Good morning, Lynn Jensen with Ventura County CoLab. Just wanted to say that we support the new LAFCo policy for the adoption of new and amended commission policy, procedures, and bylaws, that they would be considered at 2 commission meetings. We encourage the commission to adopt the proposed resolution to increase transparency on such policy changes. With newer amended policies, it may be unclear what the impact to the public agencies or projects and the LAFCO process would be without an in-depth analysis. The Commission may not be aware of projects being considered by agencies or other project proponents, and it's important that there's an effort to communicate proposed policies to these parties through the proposed resolution and the policy of having 2 meetings. Agencies and project proponents may not hear about the policy changes until it's too late if it's adopted in 1 meeting, and it's important that they have time to evaluate the impacts that could happen to not only LAFCO but to the community. So VC CoLab supports the resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, any thoughts on the proposed language?
I have a question. If there is an application that comes before LAFCO and the first reading, if you will, of the handbook policy has already been approved, but not the second, would there that not then apply to the application? And if it doesn't apply to the application, is there a way to waive it, the second portion of it, so that it can? I just don't want to have our guidelines played with to assist, development community. In this particular aspect, I know we have had a discussion about a particular policy that is already in the books, but also very meaningful, and we could end up in a situation where, because of a procedural time frame, we've allowed for something that is very egregious compared to what we normally allow.
The Commissioner's Handbook are policies or guidelines. We've had that discussion in the past. Is there a difference between a policy and a guideline? And in my view, with respect to the Commissioner's Handbook, no, there's not a difference. If there were a proposed policy, either a new policy or a change to a policy, there's been a first reading but not a second reading, that new policy or that change policy would not be in effect at the time. If you were at the same meeting, for instance, you were actually considering a proposal, an application, but that doesn't mean that in responding to that application, your commission couldn't still discuss those same issues that are giving rise to this proposed policy change or this proposed new policy. Right. So it would not be akin to a city ordinance or a county ordinance, which is setting the law. It's really their guidance for your commission in considering a proposal. So, if I'm following what you're saying, Commissioner Parks, if you had a first reading on let me try to give a hypothetical. You had a first reading in April of 2019 for a new policy, and the second reading for some reason wasn't going to come back until July. And then in June, you had an application come to your commission. Well, that policy that had the first reading would not be in effect at the time you were considering the proposal in June. However, all of the things that your commission is considering with respect to that policy change could still be considered by the commission in deciding whether to approve the application in June or to modify it or to deny it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rooney.
Thank you. I also agree that we need to have time for the public to digest the ramifications of what the proposed new guideline is. Mr. Walker, I heard you say that in regard to the handbook, there's no difference between a guideline and a policy. However, my concern is that we can waive our handbook at any day, which concerns me. So, I mean, I would rather us say guidelines rather than policy. But given that, I'm okay with most of the proposal here by staff. My only concern is that in the event that we can waive the second reading, I think that it should be only on a unanimous approval by the commission for that time. So if one commissioner wants to have the second reading, then we should move to the second reading so that we have a unanimous approval in order to waive the second reading.
Okay. Do we have any thoughts on that, Mr. Walker, on that idea? Unanimous approval to waive the second meeting?
Well, generally speaking, there's an issue with any governing body imposing a supermajority requirement on itself.
This isn't even a super.
Because
or
a unanimity or a veto power, so to speak, however you would describe it, because of the fact is that a majority of your commissioners could change that rule at any time. So your commission one month could say, okay, 6 people have to approve it for something to pass, and then the next month 4 of you could say we're changing that rule that requires 6. And because of the fundamental rule that a governing body can't restrict a future governing body, the power of a future governing body, and that future governing body really is the governing body that meets the next week or the next month. That's the future governing body. So the proposal here that Commissioner Rooney is mentioning, and as Commissioner Parks indicated, is a little different because it's allowing one person to say we want to bring this back versus a majority. My concern would be even if your commission were to approve that, your commission could change that rule at any time, including at the time that the issue was presented, such that 4 of you could say, no, we want to change that rule that allows one to set it over for a second reading. And your commission could do that.
Okay.
So it would if the commission were to do it, it wouldn't have a lot of teeth, is what I'm saying. If your commission were to say, that the second reading is up to one member to say a second reading is required.
I mean, that's my concern, is that there is a lot of arbitrariness in this body, and that concerns me. And I'm looking to just establish a good public policy of letting our public give comment for 2 times when we implement a new guideline or policy or whatever you want to call it. I think that's just good public policy to engage the public in the actions that are taken at this board.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Ramirez, did you have something?
Thank you. I like the idea of a second reading, actually, but I do like the availability of a waiver if the circumstances dictate. But I think it's really would cause us to have sort of a chaotic situation if one commissioner, and I've certainly been in my own city the one vote, but to allow one commissioner to veto, I don't think that's good government or good governance. So I would really oppose that. We need to rule by the majority. I don't think that's arbitrary. I think that's what we're elected to do.
Commissioner Freeman.
Okay. So just as a clarification, this is our first meeting where we've seen the language. So will it come back to the next meeting? Consistent with, since we don't have this policy in place, can we adopt it today, or does it, if we don't adopt it, does it have to come back to the next meeting?
Yeah, Andrea and I had that metaphysical discussion when the draft report was going through, and what we did is we left it up to your commission to decide. Okay. Because you're right. The policy doesn't apply today, so you could adopt this policy with one reading.
Fascinating.
Or you could decide that we like this policy, so this is going to be our first reading, and you can tell staff to bring it back. Okay. We punted it to you.
Commissioner Zaragoza.
Normally when we have the second reading is because, for example, if we're changing law, we're changing an ordinance and so forth, that's really going to affect individuals or agencies for time after time after time. I think that's basically most of the time when we have the second reading, or the 30 days or whatever. Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner Rooney? Just for my understanding.
I mean, we're talking about changing our policies.
Right.
So there may be agencies, organizations, or applicants that it would impact. And so what I'm saying is that the first time it comes before the commission, the agenda comes out on a Friday, the meeting is Friday, or usually Friday, right? Thursday for the following Wednesday. I mean, if you have an organization that needs to be convened between Thursday and Tuesday, that's really a short period of time in order to convene the organization, to research the change in the handbook, and then evaluate the implications that it's going to make on you. And so I'm saying it's too short of a time.
Or maybe we need to extend the time that the agenda comes out.
We've talked about that before, and it seems...
Because we have, right now, in the Board of Supervisors, 1 week before,
Yeah, but again, the same thing. If you have to convene a meeting in order to research and evaluate it, it's too short of a time. So, I mean, perhaps what I could recommend is eliminating the waive the second meeting out of this proposal, and I'll make that motion.
And what's the motion?
The motion is to approve the adopted new or amended commission policies, but eliminating under section A2 and waive a second meeting. So you have 2 second meetings to establish.
2 readings, so that there's
2 readings.
There's always
2
readings.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's my motion. And I'll speak against it because I think we need the latitude without having to waive our policies to actually have the latitude of item 2, that we have the ability to or not to do a second meeting. I don't think there's any reason to lock the hands of future
I'll second the
LAFCo meetings.
Okay, we have a first.
And if I may just finish.
Sure.
So I don't think it's necessary to tie the hands of future LAFCOs, even though they can waive their own policies. But that this sets a good precedent in terms of this is the standard process unless we actually decide to waive it. So I would keep it in there, keep the ability to waive it listed in there too.
Is that scheduled?
Are we supposed to respond to it?
I guess so. Okay, let's evacuate.
Is she in the building?
Part. Shall we keep going? Waiting for Claudia, but we can keep going here. She won't mind. Yes, thank you. So I guess we'll call this meeting back to order, if that's how you want to call it. We have a motion on the floor and a second from Commissioner Freeman on modifying the proposed language to remove section, what was it? I don't have, do you know the password? The last portion. Rochelle, do you have the password for this? I'm logged out.
I think the motion was that it could not be waived. Wasn't that the motion? That the policy could not be waived for a second. Huh?
Commissioner Parks, you mentioned the concern you had was that for future, we were not making recommendations for future board members. What was the statement you made? I think that was really important.
Isn't it kind of, isn't it no matter whether we put it in here or we don't put it in here, we still can waive it because that's the way the handbook works, right?
Well, right, but anytime, according to commission policies or guidelines, if the commission does wish to waive one of its policies, it has to make a finding and it has to outline in the resolution why it wishes to waive that policy. If the waiver is built in with the policy, then the commission adheres to the policy if it waives the policy or that portion of the policy. So it's The commission certainly can waive it, but it would have to take an extra couple of steps to do so if it weren't within the policy.
And in that case, does that mean it would probably have to come back to the commission anyway? If there has to be findings, I mean, at a public hearing and the commission says, well, we'd like to waive that policy, that would mean that the item would be continued to the next meeting anyway for a vote, right?
Potentially. And oftentimes, if it's a minor waiver, the commission can just state for the record the reasons why it's waiving the policy, and then we can amend the resolution for signature. But it doesn't necessarily require a second meeting and a change in the resolution.
Commissioner Parvin.
Couldn't it also be that you list those reasons why if the commission decided to do that in the first reading?
Oh, absolutely. And that
So
would
it could
be staff's approach.
your recommendation.
Right. If
Yeah.
there was a reason to waive it, if for whatever there was a timing issue, we would outline the reasons why we would recommend that the commission waive it. I don't foresee that happening. I mean, most of these would just be scheduled for 2 meetings unless there was some extenuating circumstance that you should waive that second meeting.
Because there are some policies, I would think, that are from LAFCo that are basically no-brainer policies that we're just adding ourselves.
That's correct. I mean, yeah, many of our policy changes are just wording changes or for clarification purposes. And, that might be a reason to waive the second reading or not. If they're, like I said, I do anticipate bringing all of these to 2 meetings anyway, unless there was an extenuating circumstance.
Commissioner Curtis.
One thing about bylaws for an agency, they are usually considered by the public the same as the Constitution is for the United States government. And from that standpoint, if I were to do this, I would want to be able to have a supermajority, which would forego the second meeting, because especially in an emergency. Now, you're saying, as it says in your handbook, you can do this, but you have to do this. It's better if you have it stipulated right in there how you're going to do it and why you can do it. So it's in the handbook. You can do it in an emergency, and it doesn't cause a lot of problems. You don't have to go around a lot of things, and it takes care of the problem.
Commissioner Rooney.
Thank you. Just to clarify what my motion is just under A2 is to take out and waive a second meeting. That's not to remove the entire thing, but just the and waive a second meeting. So that's just restating what my motion is. And then secondly, if we're adopting a new policy, what's the vote needed to approve a new policy?
It's a majority vote unless it's the bylaws, and then it's a 4/5 vote for amendment to the bylaws, which is just the first chapter of Division 1. The remainder of the Commissioner's Handbook, it just takes a majority.
So for this one, it's just a simple majority?
Correct.
Okay.
And if we made the changes that are recommended, which is the words "and waive a second meeting," wouldn't that then mean that if we choose to disapprove of it, we still have to have a second meeting?
No, I think we try to anticipate that and built in that if there was no action taken at the first meeting or a denial at the first meeting, there would be no need for a second meeting. So it's essentially if the commission approved it, then it would go on to the second meeting.
Good question.
Unless it was waived.
Well, the first one says direct that it be that the new or amended policy without modification be agendized. Mm-hmm. And the next one then would be approve with or without modification, or disapprove the new amended policy.
I do think it would be difficult to interpret this if all you eliminated out of item Roman numeral 2 is and waive a second meeting, because you would make it would look like the board could just approve it at the first meeting. So I think, Commissioner Rooney, if I'm understanding your intent, you probably want to remove the entirety of item 2.
Yeah,
Roman
with your
2.
clarification, that is indeed. So just removing then section 2 entirety. So I'm gonna revise my motion to move approval with the elimination of section 2.
Okay.
And then the seconder needs to.
Yes, I'm wondering, do
That
we
was
have
the
a
line.
second on that revised motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Freeman. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I like the idea of having it in here that we have the ability to waive a second meeting and leaving it to the discretion of the LAFCO board. If the majority wants to have it done sooner, we should have that ability. But that our policy is otherwise to do it with a second one. So I'll vote against.
I'm of the same mind. I think I like having 2 in there for now and just being descriptive of what our options are within this policy. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to remove 2, but I would prefer to have 2 in there. Do we have any other comments before we go to a vote? Should we do a roll call on this item? Let's do a roll call vote.
We have the motion repeated.
Sure. The motion was to approve the new policy minus item A2.
Okay.
And I also do want to thank Commissioner Rooney for the suggestion that we should do it in 2 meetings where possible. I think that, that is a good idea.
Yeah.
It's just we have to not tie our hands.
Okay, roll call vote. Has everyone voted from their screen? Okay.
And then I'll just move staff recommendation.
All right, we have a motion.
Excuse me, I want to clarify. Staff actually has not, the recommendation from staff is merely that you consider this item. The staff didn't actually recommend that you adopt this or not adopt it. So I would probably ask for clarification, Commissioner Parks, on your motion.
I would recommend the new or amended commission policy.
As written. Okay, first by Commissioner Parks, second by Commissioner Ramirez. Any thoughts before we proceed to a roll call vote?
I'm going to, again, speak against this motion. I think that by putting it in there, waiving the second meeting, we're canceling out the public's voice here. And if we can waive any of our policies on any given day, I mean, it doesn't need to be in here, that we can waive a second meeting. And I think that it's really important for us to consider the public when we're considering our policies. And so I'm going to vote against this.
Okay. I'll note that even CoLab supported it, right? That's right.
Did CoLab write this, or did our staff write it? And did you have any input into it before it came before the board?
I noted that during the comment period, and while not here presently, CoLab did support this, and I am noting that support.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to a vote, please. You have the screen in front of you. Vote as you will. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, staff, for putting that draft language together, and I think a second meeting is appropriate for the things that we're talking about. So let's see how it looks in implementation. Okay, moving forward then to item 13, update on LAFCo legislation. Stephen File, any commentary on that, Kai?
No, unless you have any questions.
Any questions of staff? Okay.
I'll just say thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Correspondence received, that's under item 13. Executive officers report on anticipated future agenda items, item 14. Any commentary on that, Kai?
Again, only if there's questions.
Only questions, okay. Seeing no questions, then we'll move forward. Looks like our next LAFCo meeting is scheduled to be May 15th, 2019. Make sure to mark your calendars. Yes, Kai?
Just as part of the executive officer's report, I just wanted to let the commission know that staff did attend the staff workshop last week up in San Jose, the annual LAFCo workshop. Once again, it was a great workshop. It was a lot of fun getting to see each other and attending some really informative sessions. The LAFCo workshop and, as you know, the annual conference are incredibly beneficial, both in as far as LAFCO knowledge and then keeping networks available and those contacts available. Also, just wanted to update you on the office sublease and lease, the relocation of the LAFCO office. As you recall, last month, the commission approved the whole arrangement of the county leasing office space for LAFCO and then LAFCO entering into a sublease with the county. The county board of supervisors did approve the lease arrangement with the property owner, and the sublease is now being drafted. Mr. Walker has provided some comments, and we will be reviewing that. And once finalized, I will be signing that. And we are heavy in the process of the tenant improvements and arranging for office furniture to be bought and all of the things that go along with that. So we are anticipating and hoping for a June 1st move-in date that will be there by the beginning of June. So that's the goal anyway.
We're going to have a ribbon cutting.
I have a office warming party.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Commissioner Ramirez, you had some comments?
I have a question in light of what we just walked through, the fire drill. Can you just give me a real brief update on the security issues there?
At the new office space?
Or measures that will be put in place?
Sure. Well, that was one of the criteria, one of the more important criteria that we asked for in a new office space. And the office space that we did choose has a dedicated reception room. So when you enter into the office, there is a sealed off room. There is a window through which anyone coming into the office can talk to staff. They can slide, they will be able to slide papers or documents through the window. The window is going to be impact resistant security glass, so somebody cannot break through it. Essentially, yes. There will be a door going into the office proper. Again, it'll be a door with a large window in it, again, security glass, and that door will be operated by a combination lock. So anyone entering into the office cannot proceed beyond the reception area without staff allowing them to. We will also have solid core doors on 2 of the offices that will be lockable from the inside in case staff needs to retreat to that office, lock it from anyone that is able to get past the reception room, and call 911 from there.
Is there a rear exit?
There is not. There is not. It was recommended by GSA staff that we might want to install a camera, just a security camera, which we are setting. Some of the tenant improvements do include electrical in that reception room for that in the future if we decide to do that.
For the commission, in case of a fire, you have 2 exits.
It's always good to have
multiple, yeah.
Multiple.
the roof. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. While we were discussing the issue of the policy in a second reading and all that, since we do forecasts on certain items already a month or so in advance, is that not enough of a notice to give to interested parties or stakeholders, knowing that we're going to hear this issue coming up in 4 weeks?
That certainly is part of the outreach, absolutely. As you know, now part of the agenda packets is information during the executive officer's report about future anticipated items. We will be putting future anticipated changes to the Commissioner's Handbook as part of that report. So certainly that information will be out there before it's actually agendized.
So the forecast is something that is new? We have not done this before?
We only started doing that, I think, this year.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, because in the city of Thousand Oaks, we do forecasts and we announce them at the items coming up in 2 weeks or 4 weeks. We, as a way to inform the public.
Right. The LAFCO law does require us to put on the agenda proposals that we've received. And you'll see under correspondence received which is between 13 and 14. That's a Cayugas Municipal Water District annexation. We're required to put that just as informational. The commission went one step further and wanted an actual report about what we are anticipating putting on an agenda and when. And in that staff report, we will be putting everything that we can think of that's going to come to the commission for consideration.
Oh, that's very, very accommodating. Not all cities do that. So this is really bending over backwards.
Well,
It's an extra step,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
except that there is no detail in posting what is coming up. And this is for, the purpose of this is for the backup and detail so that people have all the information.
Commissioner Rooney, you had some comments?
Yeah, and I do appreciate staff putting on there when things are coming up. You know, I think back to one recent item that we had. The public didn't have advance notification, and we had about 5 people speak on that item that day. So I appreciate any changes that are going to come to the handbook. That would be great to add on there as well. I just do want to announce that Mr. Lama is going to speak before the Ventura County Special District Association on June 2nd, I think it is. And I think the title is Everything You Wanted to Know About LAFCo, but we're afraid to ask. So we welcome you to our next meeting. So
Great. Thank you for doing that.
And
Commissioner.
he's also speaking in Simi Valley to Simi Valley Community Council in July. And this is a group of about 40 different groups that come together once a month to share information. And when I announced he was going to speak, there was all this blank face. Anyway.
Very good. That's great getting out there.
That's usually the response when somebody says I'm going to speak.
Comedy, yes. Any further comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? First, second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting adjourned.